We have a great panel to interact with this morning. We do hope that you will post your questions, as critical as they may be, as personal as they may be. We want to make sure that we're providing useful information for you so that you can potentially increase the diversity in your own teaching positions in your states and in your local education agencies. Today we have with us Desiree Carver-Thomas from the Learning Policy Institute, and she will be beginning with the Diversifying the Field, Barriers and Opportunities. She will be discussing a lot of the research that the Learning Policy Institute has itself done, and as well as national researchers across the country. Then we'll have Dr. Angela Valenzuela, who will be speaking about equity-based grow your own programs. So it's not just your general grow your own programs that might be out there, but that also apply a strong equity lens to ensure that diversity is a central part of those GYO programs. And then lastly, we'll have Miss Mary Kelly from Randolph County School System, who will be providing lessons from the field on strategies for targeted recruitment, hiring, and retention. Randolph County School System has worked with the IDRA EAC-South in creating an incredibly robust plan, and they're already seeing results on increasing the diversity through their targeted and comprehensive approach, I should say. And then we'll talk briefly about how the IDRA technical assistance and community of practice may assist school districts at low cost or no cost, and we also work with state education agencies. And then lastly, we'll have the closing or the Q&A, so question and answer opportunities. So with that, I want to make sure that we have enough time for content to be delivered to you. So we're going to start with the student-teacher diversity gap. And this kind of sets the stage about where we are. This is a new map that the IDRA EAC-South created. It is available online, and this is the 11 states in our region. DC did not have the same information available. So I want to make sure that you kind of understand what this is. So what this map does is takes NCES data, and it shows the difference for each state between students of color and faculty of color. It shows you what the difference is between those two. So Texas is the largest at over 32%. Nationally, we're at 31%, approximately. And then you'll see across the South, there are some states as low as in the 21%. We have two of those, Tennessee and Arkansas. But you also notice that those states also have fewer students of color, so they also have fewer percentages of teachers of color as well. But this certainly should be an important piece about overcoming some of the systemic barriers that have confronted state and local education agencies in recruiting, hiring, and retaining teachers of color to ensure that those students of color also have role models and can benefit, as well as all students can benefit from a more diverse teaching staff. So with that, I will turn it over to Desiree Carver-Thomas with the Learning Policy Institute. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. So recruiting and retaining a diverse teacher workforce that includes teachers of color is crucial, as teachers of color bring distinctive experiences and perspectives that support the learning of all students. However, faced with a national teacher shortage, schools across the country are struggling to hire a workforce of qualified educators that reflects the racial diversity of their communities. While conditions in many states have contributed to shortages of teachers of all types, teachers of color encounter unique barriers to entering the profession and continuing to teach for the long haul. Fortunately, a variety of programs, policies, and practices hold promise for helping to bolster the pipeline of teachers of color. I'm going to advance, thank you. Currently, the teacher workforce does not reflect the racial diversity of our country and our communities. Teachers of color make up 18% of the teacher workforce in a nation where 37% of residents are people of color, and 50% of our K-12 students are students of color. This graph shows that while nearly half of public school students in 2007 were Black or Latina, a declining proportion of those students go on to graduate from high school and enroll in college. Even fewer enter teacher preparation programs or the teacher workforce. It's important to note that recruitment of teachers of color has actually, in some ways, been successful over the years, but a major reason teachers of color continue to make up such a small share of the workforce is teacher attrition. So thinking about retention of teachers of color is just as important as increasing recruitment, if not more so. There are barriers to recruitment and retention of teachers of color all along the pipeline, from college students who could be studying teaching to veteran teachers in the field. So high quality teacher preparation programs can be costly. The average debt burden for those entering the field of education is about $25,000 for those with a bachelor's and $50,000 for those with a master's. And these are significant increases from years past. Research shows that college students are less likely to pursue fields like education as their debt burdens increase. And this is especially true for students of color, who are more likely to report that they changed their career plans because of loans. Unfortunately, completion rates are low among those students of color who enroll in college generally and in education programs specifically. Scholars cite several reasons for this, including the financial burden of college that may cause some students to work more and take fewer classes, being underprepared for the coursework, having family responsibilities or transportation difficulties, or being dissatisfied with the lack of faculty diversity. Most states require that teacher candidates demonstrate subject matter competence by passing standardized exams, the most common of which is the Praxis. Black and Latina candidates disproportionately fail these exams, and this is concerning because the exams disproportionately keep Black and Latina candidates out of teaching, but there's no definitive evidence that a teacher's performance on these exams is related to their students' achievement. A quarter of all teachers of color in 2013 entered the field through an alternative certification pathway. That's twice the rate of white teachers. Research shows that teachers who enter the field without comprehensive preparation are 2 to 3 times as likely to leave their schools than those who are well prepared. Teachers of color who do enter the field are far more likely to report leaving due to poor teaching conditions, a lack of administrative support, and not being able to influence school decision-making or even decisions in their own classrooms. As a result, teachers of color who are more likely to teach in schools with challenging teaching conditions have higher turnover rates than do white teachers. And finally, even for those teachers who want to continue teaching in their schools, school closure policies associated with the previous No Child Left Behind law have disproportionately pushed Black and Latina teachers out of their schools. As I mentioned before, retention is key to increasing teachers of color in the workforce. Retention efforts begin with making sure teachers of color enter the field well prepared to succeed. So state data monitoring can help encourage high-quality teacher preparation programs to increase enrollment and completer rates for candidates of color. This is something the state of Tennessee began in 2016 with their teacher preparation report card. It evaluates teacher prep programs on a range of metrics, including racial diversity metrics. States can also adjust requirements to allow teaching candidates to demonstrate their competency through rigorous but more authentic performance assessments like the EdTPA. These don't generate the racial disparity in pass rates of traditional multiple choice exams. And importantly, research suggests that teacher candidates' scores on performance assessments also predict their students' gains on state tests. Several states currently offer service scholarship and loan forgiveness programs aimed at increasing the number of teachers of color, including Florida, Missouri, Tennessee, Kentucky, and others. These programs offer candidates $3,000 to $5,000 per year for 2 to 4 years in exchange for a commitment to teach, often for the number of years they received funding. Programs like Call Me Mister offer candidates a comprehensive system of supports that includes loan forgiveness, mentorship, academic and peer support, preparation for state licensure exams, and assistance with job placement, and have been quite successful at helping to retain teachers in the field. Teacher residencies are partnerships between districts and universities that subsidize and improve teachers' training to teach in high-need schools and in high-demand subject areas. There are at least 50 residencies operating across the country, with several in the South, in Memphis, Nashville, Chattanooga, Jacksonville, and in other cities. Participants spend a year working as apprentices with a highly effective mentor teacher while completing related coursework at a partnering university. During this time, residents receive financial support, often in the form of a stipend and tuition assistance, with ongoing mentoring support. And research on these programs has found residencies to be an effective strategy for increasing teacher diversity, as well as boosting teacher retention. Grow Your Own programs can also be quite effective at recruiting teachers from within school communities who are more likely to stay in them, and Angela will talk about those in greater detail. Districts' hiring and induction policies can improve recruitment and retention. First, by shifting hiring timelines earlier, districts can spend more time on in-depth vetting to make sure they're hiring teachers who are a good fit. There's some evidence that the applicant pool is more racially diverse earlier in the year than later in the summer. Districts can offer teachers incentives to declare their intentions to transfer, resign, or retire early in the spring to facilitate that earlier timeline. By partnering with local teacher prep programs, districts can begin vetting student teacher candidates and extend conditional offers to talented candidates before they graduate. Districts can include teachers of color in the hiring process in meaningful ways through which they have some influence on the process and are compensated for their time. And first-year teachers who receive induction support are twice as likely to stay in teaching as those who do not receive early support. In Texas, novice teachers who participated in the Texas Beginning Educator Support System were far more likely to stay in teaching than teachers who did not receive that early support. Last slide, please. So even if teachers are prepared for the challenges of teaching, undesirable working conditions can drive them to other schools or out of the profession entirely. School administrators are responsible for a host of decision-making influence teaching conditions like hiring and being instructional leaders, setting norms, and so on. Improving school leadership can go a long way toward retaining teachers of color. Districts can create leadership pipelines that begin to train future administrators to create positive teaching and learning environments before they become school leaders. They can also provide ongoing professional development in the skills school leaders need. States can play a role by requiring that leadership preparation program participants have clinical experiences in schools with diverse students and staff, and learn to create collaborative, supportive work environments for the teachers with whom they work. And ESSA permits states to set aside 3% of their Title II formula funds to strengthen the quality of school leaders, including by investing in principal recruitment, preparation, induction, and development. And now I will hand it off to Angela.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So I'm the Human Resources Coordinator in Randolph County. We're a small rural school district, and having worked in this district for more than 20 years, I know that rural schools are an extension of the community. And so when we began to address the issue of the desegregation order that we're working under, the first thing that we did was to discuss how we could bring the community resources in to help us address the issue. And believing that the community is interwoven in the dynamics of the school, that was a big component of what we looked at. And so as we began to establish the goal for what we wanted to do within the district, we decided that we wanted to look at the diversity within the school's communities and develop pathways of support for our minority administrators, faculty, and students throughout the system, because we believe that the school and the community is so interwoven. And so we began with the objective of doing that and providing some strategic recruitment. And for our targeted recruitment, the first thing that we wanted to do was to develop some partnerships with colleges. We actually are working with several minority colleges at this time, and we're working with them to try to have a presence on their campus, not only at recruiting events, but to visit with them at other times throughout the year. We have a minority-based employment committee that we work with, and they assist us with recruiting efforts. We also looked at the procedures that we were working under, the policies and procedures that had been set up in 1994, and we addressed those policies and kind of broke them down and said, what is it about these policies that are actually hindering the hiring process for minorities? And we came up with a more holistic assessment of how we wanted to determine if a candidate is actually qualified for a position. And that has really opened the door for some opportunities. We've been able to increase our minority teacher population by 4% in about 3 months. And so that comes with the effort of the employment committee and the local school committees, and of course superintendent of the school district, Mr. Jacobs. And then we're also utilizing a district community liaison and a minority district liaison. They assist with the recruiting efforts and work with the employment committee, and they also advise us on community insights that they gain, so that we can try to make sure that we have that stakeholder support that we want to have. We're utilizing our Title II funds for some financial incentives. We're also working with the Career Technical Division and utilizing their teacher training for the Grow Your Own program. And we've established systematic support for our minority applicants who don't come through a traditional education program, but they do meet qualifications to gain certification through the Alabama State Department. And so we're working with them to try to help them get certified. And that has been very productive. We've really got some good candidates this year that we're very excited about. The next objective we looked at was, how do we need to consider removing the barriers that we have found, as we go through these policies and procedures. And two very important components to that was under the desegregation order that we were working under, our superintendent didn't really have the ability to hire and place as needed. And so we have put that provision in. And in addition to that, we're also establishing best practices for advertisement periods. In the state of Alabama, there's a 14-day advertisement period. And so in order to be able to hire at recruiting fairs, you're going to have an open advertisement, or an advertisement that that has just closed on a position, so that you can hire that position. If I haven't advertised it yet, it's going to slow down the process. And so we're working on that as well. But that's also a work in progress, but we're making great strides there. Just like was previously said, our strategies for recruitment have to also include the retention process. And so as part of the retention process, some of the things that we are doing is to ensure that we have a teacher induction program. We had a comprehensive teacher orientation program this year, and we're hoping next year it will be even more comprehensive. And we have established a teacher mentoring program. We're utilizing Title II funds for that. In addition to that, we're also utilizing state funds. That the state is encouraging school districts to have a mentoring program, and so there's some funds that are set aside for that. And so we have not had a mentoring program in the past as comprehensive as what we're doing now. And working with the curriculum coordinator, we have not had a mentoring program in the past as comprehensive as what we're doing now. And working with the curriculum coordinator, we have established professional learning days that are specific for our new hires, and we, get them a paid leave day, and they come and they attend professional development, and they also are allowed professional development days to meet with their mentors and to have a mentor teacher come in and work with them in their classroom setting, or on lesson plans, on units of instruction, and that's been very, very helpful. Of course, we're working with IDRA. They've given us some great insights as to things that we can utilize to help us in the retention process. And one thing I'm really, really proud of, as part of our community outreach, we presently have 31 retired or in-service teachers that are working as mentors. Now, you've got to remember, this is a faculty for a district of 187.5 certified employees. So we have around 2,000 students. And so it's not a very large district. But with that being said, we have 10 first-year teachers and 11 minority teachers that have less than 10 years in the system. So we are mentoring those minority teachers into the 4th year. And we're doing it by utilizing some retired minority teachers. So getting them back into the school has been very, very, it's been very helpful for us. And the last thing that we want to do as a district, and we're working on, is to analyze the community perceptions. We feel like that it's very important that the community is supportive of the growth and the minority efforts that we're making, and that we have diversity within our schools. And so we have a superintendent's advisory committee that will serve in an advisory capacity, and it's going to be a diverse population from each community in the district. And then in addition to that, we're utilizing the school counseling program to deliver counseling lessons that encourage an appreciation for diversity. And we also have a student leadership diversity committee that we're working to get started on and try to have that in place come January. And we're very excited about the insights that's going to provide for myself and for Mr. Jacobs on changes and improvements that we can make within the school setting. So that's what Randolph County is working on now.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Mary. It's been a delight working with someone with so much passion, so much intentionality, and I think that as she has, helped the district cross the borders between policy, practice, and research, you will have heard much of what she said is reflected in what Desiree Carver-Thomas was saying this morning regarding the research, and you'll also see some of that reflected in Dr. Angela Valenzuela as she talks about equity-based grow your own educated programs.
Thank you so much. I just see all the synergy here, and I'm here to share with folks that want to know about Grow Your Own, what I've learned from Grow Your Own, and I've learned from the lit review that I've done as part of this work that will be made available soon after this, but also from my actual experience, national experience, at the national level, as the director of the National Latino Education Research and Policy Project, NELRAP. We had Ford and Kellogg funded grants, and this was to nurture Grow Your Own efforts throughout the country, including in Sacramento, Chicago, Wisconsin, New York and Brooklyn, Dallas, and also now in Austin, Texas, where we have a Grow Your Own program. So Grow Your Own programs, they help address teacher shortages, retention issues, teacher diversity, and they really are aimed toward recruiting teachers from local communities. People don't know what Grow Your Own means, but basically they're homegrown teachers. They're the idea that you create a pathway into the university. It could be from the elementary schools we're doing in Austin, Texas, or from the middle school or from the high school, and it's partnership based, and with the idea of of cultivating a strong interest in the teaching profession so that graduates from the university level go back into classrooms that are similar or near similar to the ones that they grew up in. This builds off of research that shows that that teachers can relate better to their students because of their shared experiences growing up as those that they're teaching in their classrooms. It also builds on the racial congruence literature that also shows that if children have teachers that reflect their own ethnic and cultural and racial identity, that they become role models to them and they're more likely to do well in school. This is actually a pretty ample area of scholarship. Now the jury is in on this. Race matters, ethnicity matters, all of these things matter. There's also a small but burgeoning field of scholarship around the value of homegrown educators. I'll point in particular to the Skinner et al. Text as well as our recent text called Growing Critically Conscious Teachers. Next slide, please. You've mentioned an array of strategies, the importance of improving the ways that we recruit and hire prospective teachers, perhaps scholarship opportunities, stipends, counseling and mentoring, induction and career development. All of this is so important and very, very valuable. And what I discovered in my review of the literature is that all of this is important to grow your own. There's a couple of more dimensions, I think, that distinguish grow your own from partnership models and specific strategies that universities might take on. And it is that there's a real strong social justice perspective. Previous slide, please. I'm still on that slide. The previous slide. There's a really strong social justice perspective. First generation, tapping into first generation underrepresented college students is important. And also it's important to get more minorities into the teaching profession, so strong equity mandate. And one reason is not simply to have black and brown bodies for black and brown classrooms, but it's actually at its best, it's really seeing the value that is added by community members that are themselves part of these grow your own projects with a strong advocacy focus. What we're doing in Austin, Texas is we have a Saturday Academy, and this is a structure that you see here. You need to be able to have folks that connect to the community. So we have co-coordinators. We actually have a little army of people doing all of this work, but you need specific point persons. You need to have a curriculum that is co-constructed, and this is co-constructed with university. I mentioned the importance of universities and how universities can provide content and work with teachers to develop curriculum. We focus on civil rights, immigration, local history, the cultural arts, and indigenous heritage at the moment. We prepare teachers, we organize them, and build on their current organizing efforts through specifically the Austin Area Association for Bilingual Education, as well as the union. Union membership is very important and involved in pretty much all of our bilingual ed teachers are also union members. The universities are important as well as high-profile events, and so we have various events throughout the year that bring attention. The idea is sustainability. There's a strong plug here in my presentation for following approaches that are community originated and community focused. If they're not originated in the community, another alternative would be a community focused approach that is initiated. Cal State University, Sacramento has been doing that for many, many years, since the 1970s. Although this isn't the full range, we also have, for example, the pre-collegiate selective, the teacher cadet program out of South Carolina, the Center for Educator Recruitment, Retention, and Advancement, and they've been also working for a long time to get through the dual language program there. an equity issue, particularly with respect to race, but also rural, getting more rural teachers into the pathway or the pipeline. And then there's also the pre-collegiate non-selective networks, and I want people to take a close look at Dr. Margarita Bianco's efforts at Pathways to Teaching. It's non-selective in that they're interested in low-achieving students specifically, and a lot of those young people are doing really, really well, pursuing careers in teaching, as are our individuals in the Teacher Cadet Program and Grow Your Own Illinois. Grow Your Own Illinois is the Garrison, Schultz, and Skinner piece I mentioned earlier. The book, it's worth reading. So in terms of our university partnership, I mean, I think that comes in at some later point if you're starting organically. Organic is a good word. If you're starting organically in the community and ultimately you want to move toward, it could be a memorandum of understanding, a contract, but the idea would be that partners come together to discuss what the different aspects and roles will be across local, district, and university entities that come together to promote Grow Your Own Homegrown Teachers. So that might be my last slide. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Valenzuela. I want to talk a little bit about how the IDRA EAC-South, what it is very briefly, and then how we might be of service. So the IDRA EAC-South is federally funded with a grant. Our region, again, is 11 southern states, which is, include the Old South minus West Virginia and Kentucky, plus Washington, D.C. And what we do is we provide capacity building technical assistance. So, this southeast part of the region is our IDRA EAC-South, but there are 3 other regions, regional equity assistance centers that may be of service to you. And what we primarily do is we provide technical assistance, capacity building technical assistance to both state education agencies and local education agencies. So we have an expert staff here at IDRA based out of San Antonio, Texas, but we also have a cadre of professional experts and consultants throughout the region and across the country that we work with to ensure that we're providing the best direct assistance to school districts. Can we go to the next slide? So this could be through a referral from the Department of Justice, such as where we're helping Randolph County and Ms. Kelly and her school district. It could be through a referral by the Office of Civil Rights if you encountered an issue in the areas of race, national origin, sex, gender, and religion. Or it could be that you self-identify some inequities, some desegregation gaps. It might be student achievement. It might be faculty recruitment and retention, where you feel that you could maybe do a better job, but maybe you need some assistance. So we're not going to necessarily take over everything. This is not a contract. What we do is, we sign these more informal agreements with the LEAs or SEAs. It could be something as simple as referring you to materials. So a lot of what you've heard today, this is now available through a deep literature review that we worked with Desiree Carver-Thomas and Learning Policy Institute, as well as a summary on diversifying the field, the challenges and opportunities. So it'll give you a great overview of the research that has been reflected here in today's discussion, and there is a summary of that. You don't want to get too far into it, but most importantly, perhaps, for many of you working directly in states and local education agencies, is the strategies piece. So we have a strategies piece that will be represented here. It'll be for state strategies under this web-based package. So our web-based packages consist of literature reviews, summaries of that, consist of data points. They eventually will consist of little small video vignettes. For those of you who don't want to read and you're a better listener, you'll be able to hear short narrated PowerPoints. They're much more interactive than the normal PowerPoints, and on each of these topics. So we worked with Dr. Valenzuela on PowerPoints. They're much more interactive than the normal PowerPoints, and on each of these topics. So we worked with Dr. Valenzuela on a deeper literature review that she conducted on equity-based grow your own programs, and is again, a great overview of some of the successful approaches out there, and it will also be accompanied soon with a summary and strategies in there. So we should have those posted in a couple of days. Those are all available through our IDRA EAC-South webpage that we have. And then finally, there will also be a strategy piece that we are working on that will target school districts that are under resolution agreements or under Department of Justice agreements. A lot of the great action that is taking place in Randolph County is taking place in other school districts as well that we've serviced through our EAC-South. And we want to make sure that districts know those various options that they have to consider, because it will require an intentionality. It will require a comprehensive approach. None of this is a magic silver bullet and will resolve, the outstanding issues or the systemic issues that underlie many of the problems in this area. So with that, I would open it up to any questions. Please let us know if you have any questions. Share those through the chat. I believe, Michelle, that's the only way that they can post questions right now. And then we'll also have a community of practice. So if maybe you don't want to share your questions now, you'll be invited to engage in a community of practice, and some of the panelists here will be able to respond to that community of practice. And again, this is just the beginning. We expect it to roll this out, more regionally and potentially nationally to reach many people who have a lot of questions in this area. So it'll be to roll this out, more regionally and potentially nationally to reach many people who have a lot of questions in this area. So it'll be an ongoing, continuing conversation. If you would like to request our services, find out a little bit more, please see our website and click the link on the IDRA EAC-South contact sheet. It's a real short intake form that you can fill out there, and we'll be happy to get back to you if you require direct technical assistance. So one of the first questions I see is, what is the largest school district that IDRA has worked with at this time? I believe, now we go back 4 decades, so we've worked with several districts, some as small as 200 students, others as large as Houston ISD. So Houston ISD we have worked with. I think that numbers over the years have gone between 160,000 to 200,000. We've also worked with Dallas ISD as well, several other districts. Again, it's a broad array of districts, and size really doesn't matter except our approach, because our approach does take into account the contextual analysis. It begins with the theory of change that starts with a contextual analysis. Then there's a collaborative solution, the implementation, and finally the review and monitoring, evaluation, and revision if necessary. And the next question is, has IDRA received feedback from efforts made thus far? Absolutely. I think Mary certainly can provide some more insight on the specific assistance that we provided to her, both through our office and through a consultant that we worked with, and I think that she would definitely be able to give you firsthand. We have incredible case studies that we provided to the department this year under their new guidelines, showing tremendous progress. But I'd ask Ms. Kelly if she could please share a little bit more about our services with her district.
The greatest thing about working with
her district.
The greatest thing about working with IDRA was that they were a sounding board for my thoughts and my ideas, and I could bounce things off of them. And do you think this will work, or what about this? They always listen to my perspective on a situation. They might make a suggestion to me, and I was like, I don't think that'll work, and let me tell you why. Or I think that's a great idea because this is the dynamic that we've been dealing with. And so that's why working with them was such a good process for us. It's been a very relieving process because they were there to provide that technical support. And literally our plan came off of, David saying we've got to start with a vision. And I got with the consultant and put together a vision. And then I had one sheet of notebook paper, and I literally did a graph of how I wanted the process to look. This is what we've got to do. We got to have diversity. Okay, here's objective 1, here's objective 2. And then it just all came together after that. But it was wonderful working with IDRA. They gave us great insight and tools to put our plan together.
Great, thank you, Mary. I want to shift it to Angela maybe and ask a question. Great, thank you, Mary. I want to shift it to Angela maybe and ask a question. And for all the participants here, please continue to add your questions to the chat room. But I was hoping that Angela, you could talk a little bit about what was going on there in California with respect to English as a second language teachers, and one of the studies and one of the fields of practice that you mentioned going on there with one of the universities out there and the success that they've had thus far.
Yeah, we had Cal State Sacramento for a long time growing its own educators, and it came out of the late 1960s and early 1970s efforts to have, through the CSU system, more Latino and African American educators locally. So the legendary Tip Carter, if anyone remembers him from way back, as in Carter and Segura, he started, again, that was an educator-initiated program, a grow your own effort. And in time, the short of it is that the program became so strong and there was so much commitment, and they were producing not only the first Latino teachers in, unbelievably, but this is true, in the late 60s and early 70s in the state of California, but they became empowered and emboldened, and they wanted to reorganize the College of Education so that they had an explicit focus on their Grow Your Own Educator program, and so they were actually able to, through the strength that they acquired and the faculty that were committed to reorganize into a department that specifically served bilingual educator cadets coming through the system. And so this is an important point, mainly because ideally we always are talking about changes to higher education teacher preparation, and that would mean structural changes. It would be new institutional arrangements, which really are needed if we are to grow our own critically conscious teachers. I know that in LRAP, and that's one of our sites, and we're very much impacted by the story out of Sacramento, is that in LRAP, and that's one of our sites, and we're very much impacted by the story out of Sacramento, is that in LRAP we're calling for a focus on through the curriculum, not simply pathways, but a critically conscious curriculum that provides socio-political awareness, socio-cultural awareness. If it's bilingual education, it should also consist of faculty that are teaching, ideally in Spanish, in the Spanish language, if we're to grow educators that are Spanish-speaking. I know Dr. Michael Guerrero is a strong proponent of that, as are others, of having teachers that are not only culturally relevant, but linguistically relevant. So as part of the strong social justice mission, the pathways, it's really not, it's suboptimal if we're not also addressing curriculum in higher education teacher preparation.
Okay, great. Thank you, Angela. Desiree, I was hoping. Okay, great. Thank you, Angela. Desiree, I was hoping that you might be able to talk a little bit more. We've definitely talked about, diversifying the field here, but some of the national research and reports that you all have shared, with several partners, nationwide, held, some really great national convenings, but also to reflect upon the alternative certification programs and how that has impacted, especially teachers of colors, and whether or not that pipeline doesn't extend so far, how it's impacted on the retention, because a lot of school districts and states often want to push, quick pathways, when maybe they're undercutting, certain qualifications or criterias to enter, pathways or, the pipelines, and what impact that might be having in the teaching profession, trying to figure out, okay, well, what's the latest quick fix on getting teachers in the classrooms, not paying attention to too much about how long they're going to stay there. Audio on?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. And I think the first thing I'll say about alternative certification is that there's a range of alternative certification programs out there, and the requirements can range. So when we talk about alternative certification, we might be thinking of one program or two programs, but really there's several across the country, and some are better than others. So I'll start by saying that. But what I mentioned in my presentation was that a quarter of teachers of color come into the pathway through an alternative certification program, and that's double the rate for white teachers. So teachers of color are really, those who come in are really coming in through alt-cert programs. And some of our most recent research shows that alternative certification, entering through an alternative certification pathway, is associated with a 25% increase in teacher turnover, and that's holding several other student, teacher, and school characteristics constant. So we know that on average, those teachers who enter through alt-cert pathways are more likely to turn over. So if we want to build a teacher pipeline, or a pipeline for teachers of color that is stable and sustainable, it's really important that teachers enter through a high quality pathway where they'll be receiving the training and experience and support that they need to be successful in the classroom, so that they'll stay for the long haul. And teacher turnover has can be really disruptive to school communities, and there's research that shows that it's disruptive to student achievement. So it's important not just in terms of creating a workforce of teachers of color, but also are disruptive to student achievement. So it's important not just in terms of creating a workforce of teachers of color, but also our ultimate goal, which is that students are developing and learning in schools that are stable and supportive communities. So teacher turnover, which is exacerbated by alternative certification, really undermines that ultimate goal.
So I will say that IDRA has received grants and created very successful alternative certification programs, but it's also in partnership with many universities. And but the success of those has lied in the design of those programs, which would include cultural competency, trying to get some teaching practice by these future teachers in the classroom prior to them becoming fully certified teachers, and helping them along that certification process. So it definitely can be done. Some of this is reflected in the literature review and in the strategies that we have created with our partners here today. So we have another question from Mary Kelly about minority students entering the thinking track. Do you think that minority students enter the thinking track at a lower rate because of a lack of early recruiting efforts at the high school level? So Desiree or Angela, would you all like to take this?
You have been. I think that there are multiple points along the pipeline into teaching where there's an opportunity for students of color to enter that pipeline, and for some reason they're discouraged from doing so. So I think high school is one point along that pipeline, but entering to college is another point on that pipeline. Deciding what your major will be, if you're facing student debt as you're choosing your major. That could be a reason why students may opt for a career that is more lucrative, and so on. If you are in the teacher pipeline but you are struggling with the licensure exams, that's another point where you might fall off and decide to change your major and do something different. So I think that there are multiple points. I think high school is just one of them.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Yeah, and we know how systems of accountability, punitive teacher evaluation systems. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Yeah, and we know how systems of accountability, punitive teacher evaluation systems maybe playing a role there too. So there's a lot of policy-related issues impacting whether or not students want to go into that profession. And when they see their own teachers, maybe who aren't paid so well, who aren't treated so well, doesn't give a whole lot of energy to the movement. But I think that there are some great programs out there that have been built. The Denver, Colorado Grow Your Own program that's been built that has a social justice element to it to make it more engaging for not just students of color, certainly for those, but for all students, to get them more interested in the teaching profession so they can see, because we all know the incredible impact that great teachers have on students. Many of us have been impacted that way throughout our lives, and that's why we are here today. So I'll last turn it over to Angela. I think that she wanted to mention something about ethnic studies and how that might be related to this issue that we're speaking here today. So Angela, you want to say a few words there, and then we'll close it out to Michelle so she can mention the community of practice. We have about 3 minutes. Close it out to Michelle so she can mention the community of practice. We have about 3 minutes.
So I'm going to talk about a little bit about last night. I had students in my class come and present to us on ethnic studies. It's a rollout in AISD, and it's an ethnic studies, social studies class. And the students, they were very emphatic in saying that they really don't feel like they're cared for. They really don't feel like the curriculum that they're getting is responsive to their identities, their cultures, their languages, their history, and how they're really just really displeased, extremely displeased with the high stakes nature of their curriculum, the high stakes testing, test focused nature. They were amazing to hear. We're not preparing teachers to teach ethnic studies because we don't have ethnic studies curriculum in our schools. And so I would really want us to take that back possibly and think about the importance of nurturing our children's intellects and minds with a curriculum that speaks to their experiences. That is so lacking, and I fear that we're undercutting ourselves to the extent that we are not doing that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And definitely, is another factor. Again, these are comprehensive, or these are complex. Great, thank you. And definitely, is another factor. Again, these are comprehensive, or these are complex problems requiring comprehensive solutions. Again, there's no silver bullet. There was one last question, and I think maybe we have a minute. If someone wants to speak about teachers in early childhood, certainly whether or not you have half-day, full-day programs, certification requirements, and the like can impact, those pathways and pipelines. But if any of our panelists want to address this issue as well, including, teacher pay, feel free to. Okay, well, those are definitely, some of the issues that impact teachers in early childhood, and whether or not there's clear certification programs, what the requirements are at the state. The answer is not to eliminate certification for these. As a matter of fact, we probably want to make that a little bit more rigorous, because early childhood programs and learning is different than just some daycare services that are provided, that some people tend to think about this. But certainly if we want to begin to close that achievement gap, these early childhood programs should reflect strong, qualified, effective teachers, because you can have an early childhood program, but if you don't have the right staffing and the right resources, of course you might not get the right results. So Michelle, you want to tell everybody about the community of practice that will be carried forward following this?
Sure. Hi, everybody. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch on the IDRA website is a community of practice, and we do this via our forum. So our website is www.idra.org, and once you're on the IDRA website, you can click on Equity Connections, and from Equity Connections, if you just scroll down, you will see the public forums. Now, on the public forums, if you click on the title of this webinar, you'll see Diversifying the Teaching Field, and there's several different topics. There's the main topics, which are your thoughts and ideas, and that's the only one I'm going to click on. And here, you can post any questions, ideas, or practices that you guys have put in place to share with the community. So anybody that has joined this conversation is going to be able to post their questions here. All of the presenters will be accessible from this site as well, so they can answer some of that, this particular presentation and the video that is going to be recorded from this conversation will be added here as links, so you can access them from this site. And we'll also be emailing you all of the links that you need, so you don't have to remember where everything's at. But we do feel that it is very important that you guys continue the conversation, that this community of practice is not a static place. So feel free to comment and post anything that you'd like so that we can continue this conversation and hope.
All right, well, thank you very much. Again, we did today just launch the web-based package for teacher diversity, and that it should have the literature review that, again, Desiree worked on, as well as the summary and the strategies, and then within the next couple of days we should be inputting the literature review on Grow Your Own programs, the summary, as well as the strategies, and then again there will be some great additional resources